Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the webinar entitled Lighting Upgrades for Manufacturing Industries. All of PGE's trainings are in part sponsored by Energy Trust of Oregon. We work together to make sure the concepts and recommendations you learn are consistent across all of our individual programs and services. During the webinar today, we will introduce various lighting upgrade opportunities for your manufacturing plants. LED technology is now safely integrated into the lighting industry and offers many viable options for your facility. Beth has given you a handout with a few fill-in-the-blanks that will be covered throughout the webinar today, so hopefully you can take a few notes and it'll help you kind of remember some of the concepts that we're going over today. So some of the things we want you to take away or walk away with today, and even if you just get one of these, that'd be awesome. We want you to get an idea of lighting your facility effectively and efficiently. And what I mean by that would be maybe energy efficiently is kind of how you could look at that, and effectively in the respect of the appropriate light levels. We talk about that a lot in our industry and making sure that you have enough light to do what you need to do in the space. I'm going to offer some of the latest technologies. We won't cover everything, but you'll get a little bit here and there to relight your space, something to walk away with, and then understand all of the benefits of doing these upgrades. And toward the end, we're going to cover some incentive offers from Energy Trust of Oregon. So you already heard a little bit about me in the beginning. Now I want to know who you are. So you get to use your annotation tools in the left-hand corner there and just click on which one best describes you or fits the position that you're currently in. So while we're waiting for the tally, I'd like you to be thinking of a particular area needing an upgrade. So for example, you might have a warehouse or a storage area, or maybe your main manufacturing facility area needs an upgrade, possibly your offices. We're going to cover that today as well, or you might have some task lighting, maybe even parking lot, which we're not going to cover today, but that might be an area for you to start thinking about. It's always good just to start with one. So write that down on the second page of your handout. Right at the bottom it says your space, and just jot down a place that you know that's dark or old that needs an upgrade. And be thinking about that space as we cover everything through the webinar today. Looks like we have a good variety of people on the call today, covering several different positions, facility managers, maintenance managers, and I think you'll be able to get something out of today's webinar. Thank you for that. I'm going to start with a few key lighting terms that we'll be using throughout the webinar. Depending on what your background is, some of you might have already heard these terms, but in case I use them today, that way you'll have an idea of what I'm talking about. So most people know about linear fluorescent, so that's your 4-foot and 8-foot fluorescent tubes, fluorescent lamps. Here's a compact fluorescent that you might have in your facilities. We don't see this as often in manufacturing facilities, but you may run across one or two. This lamp right here is their high-intensity discharge, or HID lamp, very, very common in a manufacturing plant, up in a high open ceiling type of fixture. And then, of course, we have LED, which we'll cover as far as replacements are concerned today. So those are LED chips that you're looking at right there. Some other terms, you'll hear the term lamp. You already heard me use that. That is actually the technical term for these. This tube is actually, the technical term is a lamp, compact fluorescent lamp, and an HID lamp. When it comes to LED, it's referred to a little bit differently. Inside of your light fixtures, you have a ballast or a driver that looks like this, and that is what drives the lamp, keeps it going. When it comes to LED, we call it a driver, but they look very similar and do a similar thing. A light fixture is actually referred to as a luminaire. You won't hear me use the term luminaire very often today, but most of the time you'll hear me use the term light fixture. And that is an entire fixture, so it includes the ballast, lamp, the housing, the whole thing. different types of fixture consist of, this one is a recessed troffer that is up in a T-bar grid ceiling. Typically, you would find that in your offices. This is a strip fixture that you'll find maybe in your task lighting and sometimes hanging from the ceiling in higher ceilings areas. And this is what your high bay looks like. That's the lamp inside. This is the actual luminaire or light fixture. And a lot of these fixtures also have retrofit kits available, and we'll cover a little bit of that today. So here's kind of what it looks like inside. That is the housing where you have the guts of the fixture. You got your sockets, you got your ballast. This is the housing, or sometimes they refer to this as a reflector if the light is reflecting off of it. So that just gives you an idea of what it looks like. And then, of course, you add a lens or a louver to cover the tube or the lamps or the LEDs in some cases. This is just one version of a lens. You could also have a parabolic louver, silver parabolic louvers. Some of you might have those in your offices. This is what the bigger picture of what the high bay looks like. Right here you have the ballast, and this is the reflector, and up inside that reflector is the lamp. This right here is a stem that's usually hung off of, sometimes it's called a pendant, things like that. Another term you'll hear me talk about today would be light distribution pattern or beam pattern, some people call it. Basically that means what's coming out of this fixture and where is the light going. So when the light distributes out of a light fixture, it has a light distribution pattern that you will see on your product or on your space. So that's another term you might hear us talk about. We've reached an era in the lighting industry that, a few years ago we wouldn't have imagined we would be at. LED technology is our main lighting source for upgrades in this territory, as well as for new construction. The Energy Trust of Oregon, their lighting incentive projects consist of more than 80% LED technology being installed. And in some cases, some of their programs have 98% LED. So we are definitely there. A few years ago, we wouldn't have thought we'd be this far. According to the Department of Energy, which some of you are probably familiar with, there were 473 million LED unit installations in the United States last year, so in 2015. And this was more than double the number of LED unit installations in 2014. So these LED installations equaled an annual cost savings, just to give you an indication, throughout the nation of about $2.8 billion. So you're talking, energy savings. That's how, equals cost savings for people, and that's huge. So if you look at this last column here, the estimated saving potential, you'll see that these two highlighted areas, the linear fixture and the low or high bay fixture, have the highest percentage of available energy savings. So these are the two main fixtures we're going to talk about today, which is cool because what it's basically saying is they have the highest potential out there. So if you were to change out all the light fixtures out there in the United States, this is how much energy savings by BTUs, which is a way to calculate energy savings. So you would have a huge amount of savings here in the linear fixture and the high bay. So that's what we're going to cover. So in your warehouses or in your manufacturing facilities and your offices, you got potential all over the place using LED. So this is a great thing. Now, if you want to get into these terms a little bit further, you can visit the Department of Energy website at energy.gov. Just type in solid state lighting or LED lighting. You'll get pages and pages of documentation and some really cool graphs and charts, and have some fun with it, or it'll put you to sleep at night. Either way, it'll be exciting. I'm guessing you're somewhat familiar with LED technology and what it's capable of. And here are a few examples for you. You can use it on your glove as a built-in flashlight. That's pretty cool. You can highlight your shoes. You can even highlight your eyes, which is a little bit scary. Or forget paying for those high-priced diamonds. They now have LED rings that look just like a diamond. So some people thought LEDs were expensive, not compared to diamonds, right? So there are many options available for this technology, and we're pleased to be able to embrace it in our industry. especially because of the significant amount of energy savings that's available, like we just talked about on the last slide. However, my goal today isn't only about how you can save energy. I want you to walk away understanding the benefits of quality, decent, sufficient, and appropriate lighting in your space and how it affects the people in it. Because we light for people. Let's face it, the people that are in the space are actually going to be affected. So I want you to start thinking about some of the areas that you can think of in your facility where maybe people are frustrated or irritated and they don't even realize that it's because of the light levels. So in your mind right now, be thinking of some spaces that you walk in. Maybe it's a retail store. Maybe it's your home, just places that feel depressing and dark, and that would be an opportunity for an upgrade for you. When I walk into a retail store that does not have the appropriate lighting, it affects me. And maybe that's because I'm a lighting geek, but maybe you have the same feeling and you don't realize that it's the lighting. Lighting makes a difference, and you can ask several different lighting designers and lighting people. They will, in some of the magazines you will read, they have a lot of information on websites and things like that you could read through about the effects of lighting and making appropriate lighting. We have even seen results of increased productivity. Less sick days, for example, in a manufacturing facility would be something to look at. So you can easily update your office lighting, that's what we'll start with, and save energy too, using LED. Most of you are going to have maybe a small or even a very, very large office like what you're looking at in your manufacturing facility. So we'll just start by seeing what we can do there. The lighting design community uses what we call IES recommendations or guidelines. IES is Illuminating Engineering Society. They're like the Bible of the lighting industry, been around for over 100 years. They give us guidelines, and they update the guidelines as we go. So designers use this to light a space, basically. These are just a few from IES. So what I've done is just taken a small amount, and the Lighting Design Lab and Energy Trust of Oregon created a 2-page document with IES recommendations that you can use and get a copy of. This one is just discussing open offices for now, and then I'll show you a few other highlights throughout. The numbers in these columns are foot candles. So you see that word, foot candles, which is basically a measurement, so to speak, of the lighting in your space. It's kind of how we determine what is needed in each of the areas. So in an open office, the average range would be anywhere from 30 to 50 foot candles. In 40 being, just the main area. So just as an example, in the 90s, IES recommended, like 70-foot candles in an office, because at that point in time, that's what we thought we needed with the technology that we had. Today, they recommend between 30 and 50 because they use a lot of task lighting, and there are so many different variables to pay attention to, and the technology has come so far. So foot candles are measured by a light meter, which can be purchased at a local electrical distributor, or you can contact your lighting professional partner and borrow theirs, either way. There are many different factors to keep in mind when you're, such as like energy code and things like that, when you're looking at your space. So if you have a space that's really needing an upgrade, look at what kind of daylighting it has in it, you can look up what the energy code requirements are and try to meet those, the current energy code requirements. You'll also want to consider the condition of your existing space, such as the color of the floor, carpet, or hardwood floors or concrete, the color of or condition of the paint on the walls. Those are very important because they reflect and that creates a different foot candle level for you depending on what you have. So in the space that you have right in mind right now for an upgrade that you wrote down on your handout, if it has fewer average foot candles than what you're seeing on this chart, that might be your opportunity. So one of the best things for you to do is just grab one of those foot candle meters, go check it out and see where you're at. You could be overlit, for example. Maybe you have 70-foot candles still and you don't need it. Great opportunity for energy savings. but our goal is to get you at the right amount of light so people feel comfortable. So if you would like a copy, you can chat with Beth and let her know you'd like a copy of this foot candle chart that Energy Trust and Lighting Design Lab made. She can send you one later. So most older offices have recessed fixtures, typically in a T-bar ceiling, grid ceiling like what you're seeing here. So you might, in your office, have a fixture that looks just like this. It's an acrylic lens troffer fixture is what we call it, recessed up in the ceiling. So you also might have a parabolic fixture. This one has 3 lamps in it. Sometimes you'll just have 2, sometimes 4. Sometimes it's made for 4, but only has 2, either way. And this is what the parabolic louver fixture looks like. Over the years, you may have upgraded these troffers with various options, such as fluorescent T12 to T8, for example. Did that for many years. Or maybe you even changed out the lens, or you added, to a different type of lens, or you added a reflector kit maybe up behind here to push out some light for get some more light. That was very popular for a while. The point is that LED technology can now take you to the next level. So you can even save more energy, but also you can have a high fixture efficiency. So I mentioned fixture efficiency before, and basically what that means is how much of that available light, those lamps that are up in that fixture, how much are getting out of this fixture. So this acrylic lens troffer might say have 85% of the light that's available with that lamp and ballast is getting out. In this fixture, it's capturing some of the light up inside the fixture, so not all of it's getting out. Maybe it's only getting 75%. With LED technology today, you're up in the 90s as far as how much percentage of light is available to get out of those, or is able to get out of those fixtures. So high fixture efficiency, very important, also saving energy at the same time. So when you're upgrading your fluorescent recessed troffer fixtures, one option is to purchase a brand new LED fixture, similar to what you're seeing on the screen here. Here's one up in the ceiling. Here's some different manufacturers that make them. Every major manufacturer makes a version. They all look a little bit different. They all have different variables to them, but basically the same concept. There are many different lens options available for light distribution. So how to get that, where that light is going to go, the light distribution pattern. There's all kinds of, different lenses available, or louvers. The cost will range, but it isn't much more than what you would pay for a new fluorescent fixture. So even though you're going to pay, if you bought a brand new fluorescent fixture, the LED may be a little bit more, but it's not too far from that. The wattage for a new LED fixture will range from 45 to 55 watts, which is still a nice energy savings compared to the average wattage of 86, which is what your typical fluorescent fixture would have. So that's a 20 to 45% energy savings, depending on what you're replacing. So if you have T8 existing, or if you still have T12, that's where your range comes in as far as energy savings. So speaking of equal to a fluorescent, when we speak of light output or fixture efficiency or any of those terms that you hear for LED technology, it's important to note that the LED terms are a bit different than what we used to use in the standard technology. So we had the same challenge back when we were replacing HID high bays with fluorescent, which some of you might have done in your facilities or in warehouses or manufacturing. When you compared the light output in the two technologies, on paper it might appear that the fluorescent wouldn't provide enough light to match up to the existing HID. But there are so many more other factors to consider. The best thing I think for you to do in this scenario, because LED terms are a little bit different, is to remember when you're replacing a fluorescent fixture one for one with LED, install a sample. And this is on your sheet if you're taking notes. That's the number one thing to remember, is install a sample and take some foot candle readings to ensure that it's the light level that is appropriate and that you need for your facility. Now, if you want to get more technical than that, you could do a lighting layout of the space to show the average foot candle level using some lighting software. The wattage will be likely less, so you'll save energy, but you'll want to ensure that you're providing the appropriate light levels for your space. So this lighting layout using software would work for you. So on paper, you'd be able to see what that fixture will do. And most of your lighting partners, your lighting professionals should know how to do this. If they don't have lighting software available, you may want to try someone else because it is a very common practice and standard. But lighting samples in the ceiling, even better. You can also use an LED troffer retrofit kit instead of a brand new LED fixture. There are many manufacturers that make just a simple kit where you can transform your existing fixture using the housing into a brand new fixture. So here's kind of how the process works. This is one example, and remember that most manufacturers make them, or some of the major ones do, so they all work a little bit differently. But basically you have the guts here. They've left the sockets in, but you can take them out. They replaced the ballast, with a driver, and then they installed this strip of LEDs inside that existing housing, and then they put a lens on it. There you go. Pretty simple. Probably not as fast as that, but it really does take less than, 15 minutes, some even quicker in the ceiling. So this is another option for using your existing. The light output for the kits is very equal to the new fixtures that we just looked at for the most part. They're very efficiently, they spread the light very efficiently. They put it where you need it, and it's very comfortable to sit under. So I have had, LED fixtures and kits both. Very good, the LED technology is very comfortable. It's not, some people don't like fluorescent, and they might think that they're sitting under fluorescent when it's actually LED, but it's much better. So you might use a kit to help offset some of the cost of your existing fixtures if your existing fixtures are in good shape. But if you are reformatting your space or rearranging things, new fixtures would definitely work better. So here's another kit that's similar. This one's by Lithonia, and again, most manufacturers have some version of a kit. So remember that LED technology has a very long life. This is also one of the questions on your handout. We're talking like 50,000 hours plus, and most of the time they'll list this on their data sheets so you can look and see how long they're saying the life is. It's hard right now. We're in a stage now where we've seen some of them last, several hours, but it's hard for them to predict because some of them are still going. So typically they are predicting 50,000 plus hours. They don't have the typical depreciation that you would see with a standard technology. So things like fluorescent depreciate over time. At a certain amount of hours, they start depreciating. The light output depreciates because of all kinds of variables, or different things happen to the light fixture and the LED and the fluorescent. But with the LEDs, they will last a lot longer. They don't depreciate as fast. So that's a good thing. That means that 50,000 hour life, you could still have, close to 95% of the light still getting out of that fixture. So this is a great thing. The long-term benefits are substantial because you shouldn't have to touch these fixtures for many, many years. Maintenance people are thinking, well, I won't have anything to do, but I'm sure that's not true. So here's a little case study we can look at. This is a small manufacturing facility. This is their office. This is what the office looked like. They do some they have some drawings and some blueprints that they look at, but mostly, computer monitors and a little bit of paper here and there in their office. That's what they're doing. This includes a lunchroom and some private offices in the scenario. They had 46 of a 3-lamp recessed paracube troffer. So what you're seeing up there are actually paracubes, not parabolic, so they're not the big louvers, they're just the really small louvers. And you can see the shadows on the upper walls. That's very common for a parabolic or a paracube fixture because it's shooting all of its light straight down on the desk, but you don't see anything in the perimeter or in the upper walls, so it has a darkness feel to it. This was fluorescent T8. Each of the fixtures had approximately 86 watts. They were at 65 average foot candles in their space. So remember, IES said 30 to 50 is pretty common, or 40. would be a good average for an office, and they were at 65, so they were actually overlit. So let's see what happened. They changed this to 38-watt LED troffer kits. So this is a kit in the ceiling. They went 1 for 1 is what they did. The average readings, what the person that took care of this job went around and did some readings here and there, and it ranged anywhere from 38 to 62. So remember, IES had 30 to 50. So in this space, they're actually in pretty good shape. The 62 was probably right underneath the light fixture, and 38 was, far or, further away. But take a look at the upper walls. See how much better of a feel it has. And they are, even though you might think, well, they had an average of 65 foot candles, but they actually had too much light, and it could have been glary before, but now they're in really good shape. Plus, they saved a ton of energy because they went from 86 to 38 watts. So good stuff. The employees were very happy. The owner was quite pleased. Let's see what he got for his money. The initial project cost was about $7,500 just for all those, the 46 fixtures. The Energy Trust incentive was a nice chunk there, $34.50. So their net project cost was around $4,000. Their annual cost savings per year because of the energy savings is $602. That may not seem like a lot, but for a small office, that's huge, especially because over the lifetime of that, that system, that 50,000 plus hour system, they're saving that much every year, so that adds up. So that, you're looking at a 15% rate of return, not to mention all of the many other benefits. So let's move on from office lighting. We're going to shift a little bit over to your task and workbench lighting, you might refer to it as. But lighting that is, you have to look at some small items in a manufacturing facility quite often. So this gives you an idea of maybe some upgrades that you could do there. So how much light are you going to need in a space like this according to IES? If you look at an assembly line or maybe component manufacturing, those are a couple of different areas in the industrial facility. They're giving you a wide variety. So just a large item that's real simple in assembly line, you just maybe need 30-foot candles. So your range would be 15 to 60. But in a really difficult area where there's just some small things, they're saying 100-foot candles. So think about like a chip plant, for example. Right under the task that they're looking at those chips and doing things with the chips, they're going to need 100-foot candles. Their range can be anywhere from 50 to 200, depending on what it is they're doing in the space. So that gives you an example. Some of you may have bare open strips, just like this. Single lamp or 2 lamp right over your task or your workbench in your facility. Typically this would be an existing T8 lamp or a T12 lamp mounted right above the bench. This fixture is a bit glary, but it's workable for over a table where your machinist needs to see that kind of detail. This type of a fixture is definitely something that can be upgraded. One option is to purchase a brand new LED fixture. Looks very similar to this. This is a strip fixture housing, and it just has the sockets are not there, as you can see, for a fluorescent lamp, but it's changed to a complete strip of LEDs. Many manufacturers make this fixture, and this is what it looks like on the inside. The cost will be a little bit higher than a standard fluorescent strip because you can get those strips for pretty cheap, as you know. But think about how much energy you might save. Just a standard strip, 2-lamp strip would be maybe 58 watts, where you could get down to 42 watts or less with an LED. You may want to include a lens on top of one of these fixtures because, this LED looks pretty glary. However, over a workbench, you may not need it because all the light is directing straight down, and that is very, very normal for a workbench. So you can decide either way, but most of these manufacturers have a lens available if you don't want to look at the LEDs. But I would say a workbench would be good. Another option for your existing fluorescent strip would be to, also for recessed troughers in an office as well that we talked about before, but you could also use an LED tube. These are referred to as TLEDs, you might hear, but basically it's LEDs inside of a tube, looks similar to a fluorescent when you turn it on. The light output for the tubes are there's over 1,000 of these LED tubes, or lamps, the technical term, that exceed 3,100 lumens. Now, when I say 3,100 lumens, what I'm meaning is light output or available light that comes out of that lamp. And the reason that that's important is that is equal to your high-performing T8 lamp. So they've already exceeded your high-performing T8 in a lot of cases. They have had some recalls, so you definitely have to be careful with what you're purchasing because it's still new to the industry, or it's newer to the industry. The cost has decreased. Fluorescent T8s, for example, are $5 or less. A TLED ranges from 15 to 35, depending on what wattage you're purchasing or what manufacturer. So that just gives you an idea. But remember that you're still going to save a lot of energy. So even though the cost is higher, it still might be a benefit to look at. One thing to be cautious of is this is how a fluorescent looks. The distribution pattern out of that lamp is 360 degrees, and it's hitting the top of the fixture, so you're getting some reflectance off of it. So in this trough or fixture that we're looking at example, you are getting some light off of the reflectance there. So if you put an LED inside that fixture and it actually is 180 degree or only 90 degree distribution because of the way they have some the LEDs only come out the front of the lamp, basically you may be doing some damage to that fixture and what it was really intended for. So you just have to be careful about what you're doing. It might work well because you don't care about the reflectance. Just be cautious. And in a strip, it may not matter at all. That would only be for a troffer. In a strip, all the light's going to direct basically all the way down, so you wouldn't care. There are basically 3 different types of LED tubes. There are probably more, but these are the 3 basic types. One uses the existing fluorescent ballast, so it will operate off of your existing fluorescent, so you don't have to take the fluorescent ballast out, you just install your tubes and it'll work. So make sure you read up on what you're purchasing ahead of time. There's also one that bypasses your existing fluorescent ballast, and then you just wire directly to the socket. And then the other one gets a brand new LED driver and replaces the fluorescent ballast with the LED driver, and then you get new LED tubes. So very similar to a lamp and ballast change out. So I've been doing a lot of talking here. Let's let you don't get to talk per se, but you can use your annotation tools. And what we've covered so far, tell me, is there any of the options that work for you? Is there anything that you want to highlight and say this is something that you might want to use? Just give you a moment to circle and say, yeah, I'm interested in that. You might have some task lighting, you might have some office lighting, you might want to go with a brand new fixture or retrofit kit, or maybe try out some tubes. Excellent. I hope you all get an opportunity to look at some of these and take a look at your offices and your task lighting and see if there's some upgrade potential available. Awesome. Thanks for playing that game. We're going to move on into your manufacturing area. So there are a lot of benefits of improving the light levels in your manufacturing area that we've already covered. But one main one would be, happy employees means, you increase productivity. So anything you want to do to boost your productivity is very important. And we feel like lighting is one of the most important things because you need to be able to see your task and what you're doing. With LED technology today, you can update your facility with the appropriate light levels and save a ton of energy too, which means, of course, cost savings for you. So let's see what IES has to say for your manufacturing area, usually if you have large components, for example, we already talked about the foot candle levels, large and medium, this is the average that they're looking at. And you can see the range is huge because it completely depends on what you're doing. So again, grab a foot candle meter with your lighting partner and go in and do some readings and see where you're at compared to what IES is recommending. And that might give you an opportunity for looking at an upgrade. You may have too much lighting. Hard to imagine in a manufacturing facility, but you could check it out. So this is what you probably have in your space right now, or one example. This is the HID that we looked at earlier. You might have one that has an acrylic lens instead. So this is an acrylic lens high bay with that high bay lamp underneath. Some of you maybe have already upgraded to T8 or T5 high bays. So you see these up in a high ceiling as well, and they usually have anywhere from 4 to 6 lamps, sometimes more, to maintain. The reason fluorescent was so much better than HID is it didn't depreciate as quickly as HID, and it restrikes really quickly, so when you turn the lights, the power goes off. HID takes a long time to warm up, fluorescent doesn't. So that was one of the options. Either way, they're both have an opportunity for upgrade with LED. There are many shapes and sizes available with LED high bays, as you can see on the screen here, some crazy ones. The performance is definitely better than HID and some fluorescent. And when I'm talking about performance, I'm talking about where the light is going, where it's distributing, and what it's doing coming out of that high bay. And they've always had to worry about that with your old high bay technology as well. You have an opportunity to save 30 to 70% in energy savings, depending on what you're removing, if it's HID or fluorescent. That's why there's such a large range. The cost is going to be definitely higher than a fluorescent. So let's say, for example, you could buy a fluorescent fixture. You know, HID fixtures were really expensive back in the day when we were purchasing them. So fluorescent maybe was a couple $100, maybe more. But the LED is probably going to be higher than that. But I'd like to say that I think that the benefits for going to LED are going to outweigh that initial cost. Remember, you won't have to touch the fixture for a very long time. You're going to save money on energy, and so you'll have lower maintenance costs for a long, and then you don't have to worry about that depreciation. So the HID depreciation, as you probably know, was horrible. You would go, within the first 2 years, you only sometimes have half the light output that was initial. And that's why people change to fluorescent, which still has a depreciation not as bad, but LED is even better. I've heard some people mention things about in a manufacturing facility not wanting to use LED because of interference with the equipment, but I have yet to see any studies on that. It's very similar to when we started installing electronic ballasts, people were worried about that. And I definitely think it's something you want to look into if you're concerned about it, but I didn't have any reports that I could find where that had happened. So LED is a chip, so some people worry about it, but I think you're in good shape there. There are a lot of manufacturers that make LEDs just for industrial facilities, so they're in tune with that. Here's one from Lithonia, and many other manufacturers make it as well, that basically looks just like a fluorescent. So if you have fluorescent already and you want to upgrade to LED and make it look exactly the same, they have them that look just like that. That is LED, even though it looks like a tube in there. Here's a manufacturer that makes industrial, they focus on industrial, and they work excellent with sensors. So if you have areas, for example, where you have some daylighting or some skylights that you want to use with sensors, you could actually install a daylight sensor in your high bay, and it would dim it down to whatever foot candle level you want it to as the daylight comes in. And then the electric light, would compensate with the daylight. So your employees wouldn't notice if it's done correctly. So that's an option for you for saving additional energy. And you can also shut it off and on as well, but most people in manufacturing facilities don't like to do that because, that would probably annoy a lot of people. However, if you have an area maybe that shuts down where the workers go on a break, or maybe at nighttime it doesn't do anything, you could use an occupancy sensor for that, and they would all shut off while no one is occupying the space. So another example, LED loves off and on. They don't worry about that at all. LED is very good for controlling. Here's a manufacturing facility example I want to look at. This particular facility had 57 high bays in it. They were 400-watt metal halide high bays, so it's that same lamp we were looking at before, very common for a facility. This company manufactures motorhomes or large RV equipment. They do small parts and they do fixing in the facility. The current light levels were 15 to 25. It was only controlled by a switch, so it was completely off and on. So here's what they ended up with. They installed 199-watt LED high bays. So they went from 400 plus watts down to 199. They did a one-for-one, so it was the same quantity. And they included controls on all the fixtures. So each of the fixtures got a fixture mount control. So each of it, if they were not working in an area, the other employees, for example, were not working on one side of the warehouse or the manufacturing facility, they shut down. So that was actually a great energy savings for them. They were 360-degree occupancy sensors, so that means that it covered a whole wide range of area for occupying the space. The foot candles now on the relighting this space were up to 30 to 45. So they went from 15 to 25 as an average to 30 to 45. So remember, we're looking at the appropriate light levels. Let's see how they did. So I would consider this particular space a large component manufacturing. They had task lighting under some of their small parts, but they were right within the range, I think, when they went to the 30 to 45, because they are big. That's big equipment that they're putting together, assembling or manufacturing. So I think they did a good job on that. They also had some task lights over their heads if they had to get into any of the small equipment, so that seemed to work well for their scenario. Now, if this had been a warehouse, let's just say they housed those RV facilities. Here's kind of what IES recommends for a warehouse as well. So just an open warehouse, 20 average foot candles. Now let's just say you wanted to go from a warehouse to a manufacturing in that particular facility. They could have done that. They could have put sensors on those and dimmed them down to a certain level using controls. So they only had 20-foot candles in a warehouse space for a warehouse, and then when they went to manufacturing, they could have gone up to the full 100%. So they have an option with LED technology now using that type of a control. So good stuff here for LED. Let's see how the cost looked for this particular owner. Now remember, LED high bays are a little bit more expensive, and there were 57 of them. So their initial cost was 36 plus. Energy Trust had a nice incentive for them on this LED high bay of almost 18, well, a little over 17, I guess. So their net project cost was a little under $19,000. But look at that annual cost savings. So every year they're saving $5,600 because they decreased their electric bill. That's a 30% rate of return. What some people don't know or don't realize is energy is actually the highest cost of a lighting system. So you just saw that $5,600 annual yearly cost savings. This is what this looks like. You might have to pay the initial cost up front of your whole entire lighting system, might be 30% of the actual cost, and maybe 10% to maintain it along the way. But the big chunk is how much electricity that you have to use to run that system. So 60% of the cost of that total system over time is energy. So saving energy is key. So tell me, you got some crazy shapes here. Let's see what you like. Anything look fun to you for your space? If you still have fluorescent or HID and you want to upgrade to LED, here's just a few samples. And lots of manufacturers make them, so partner with your lighting person. But feel free to use your annotation tools and circle or check or highlight which one looks the most fun to you. You like that little spaceship one over there, huh? Excuse me. Yeah, I think this shape looks very strange, but in the ceiling, looks awesome. It's amazing what you can do with LED. LED, you know, you can put it anywhere, so you can make it circle and oblong, and you know, we don't have fluorescent, you know, tubes that we have to worry about any longer. Where they used to make those U tubes, which was really scary, but LEDs, you can just put them everywhere. Excellent. Thank you for playing that game. You guys are doing awesome today. We're going to just take a moment here and get Simone on the call. She's from the Energy Trust of Oregon, and she's going to give us a few samples now of what we've been looking at in all of our cost savings and those big Energy Trust incentives, and she's going to tell us about that.
Hello there. My name's Simone Auger. I'm a lighting specialist with the Energy Trust Existing Buildings, Production Efficiency, and New Buildings programs. So I just wanted to share with you some of the incentives. These are just samples of available incentives that we have in the lighting program. These are reflective of some of the scenarios that Don talked about. So just want to go with the first one where you may have an office area that you're interested in retrofitting, and Don talked about the troffers, recessed troffers. The incentive available for the fixture or fixture retrofit kit, as you can see, runs from $65 to $75 per fixture. So the main thing about the incentive process as we go through these is that the application will need to be approved before you can proceed. So just make sure that you have the authorization in place, the incentive offer signed in place before proceeding. The troffers are a great opportunity in terms of office upgrades where you are looking for controls. We add an additional amount, so the $75 amount you'll see is when occupancy sensors are added or other types of controls incentives we have available. The next fixture down below is LED high bays that Don just talked about. That may be in your manufacturing area. There's a nice incentive for that. You saw the example that she gave where there was a pretty good incentive payout on that. We see these from 175 to 275 depending on the wattage of existing, going to 150 watts or less for the LED fixture. The next one down is the strip fixture. I see a lot of these where they have the 8-foot T12s in perhaps a manufacturing or production area. This is a good solution for some. We have $8 to $16. Again, that higher amount is when you are adding controls to the package. So you can see here replacing an 8-foot T12 2-lamp with an 8-foot strip lamp would be $8 to $16. Going over to the TLEDs, T8 to TLEDs lamp for lamp is $4 per lamp, $8 again if connected to controls. That is a, again, per lamp incentive amount. And going down to the sensors, we have just one example of several occupancy sensors and controls incentives available. This that I'm showing is the fixture mount occupancy sensor that may be on a high bay in a warehouse area, for instance, just as an example, where you have areas in the space that aren't occupied as often. And these controls will automatically sense activity and then dim down the fixture to a safe level when not in use, and that is a great energy saving advantage for you. So again, if you could just remember, the one requirement that we need you to take away is the pre-approval for all projects before purchase of products or existing equipment is removed. Thank you very much for your time. Hope to work with you soon.
Simone, this is Beth.
Yes.
We just got a question about where you could find this lighting software that you mentioned.
The lighting software?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was a question for Dawn. I apologize. Dawn, could you answer that question?
Yes, definitely. The lighting software that I mentioned about doing a calculation or a layout for your facility, I would talk to your lighting professional. Most of the lighting manufacturers would have some lighting software they use. Like, for example, Lithonia uses, or Acuity Brands Lighting uses a company called Visual, and there are several others. So you can download them and purchase them, or the best bet is to go to your lighting professional or whoever it is you deal with, like a distributor or a contractor, and ask them to do a lighting layout using their software for you. There are several different brands of it.
Thank you, Dawn. And thank you, Simone.
Okay. So one thing I don't want you to forget that we didn't cover today is your parking lot. So remember that outdoor, you have lighting as well. And we have an outdoor lighting seminar coming up on September 20th that at the end of this, the slides here, you'll see the exact example of it from Beth, and you can sign up for that workshop. That's an actual live, you get to come to the space and take a look at some fixtures and things like that, all about outdoor, including parking garage. So I just want to make sure I mention that. So your next steps, take a look at your handout, and at the end of your page, hopefully you've been making some notes on a space that you know that you have, you're ready to upgrade. Write down that space, make sure that you, sometimes it helps you if you write down stuff, that you contact your lighting distributor or your contractor partner next so you can coordinate with them on taking some foot candle readings in that space. Then get a quote with some options and ideas for your space. Review your incentive options, and most of your trade ally network, the contractors and distributors, will know what the incentive options are so they can do some of that paperwork for you. And then, of course, go up the channels and get approval with whatever you need to do so you can get moving on some upgrades. Even this year, I think you could make this happen. A lot of the LED technology is out of the box, ready to go. So that's kind of your next step summary. So even though we haven't covered every aspect of your facility today, now you at least have something to start with. There are other areas, maybe storage areas, maybe cold storage, things like that, that we didn't cover, or maybe your type of space that we didn't cover. But at least this gives you a start, something to think about and something to move forward with. Hopefully you have an idea now of how to relight your facility using LED technology, if you haven't done so already. And most of all, that you're lighting it efficiently and effectively, so you're getting the right amount of foot candles, the right amount of light to have happy employees and increased productivity. Not to mention all the energy savings and the cost savings that will give you and maintenance savings along the way. So we're excited about that for you. Start planning your upgrades, lighting upgrades, and your next steps to do so. I'm going to pass it back over to Beth now, and she's got a few things to finish up for us.
Thank you, Dawn. I just wanted to mention briefly that Thank you, Dawn. I just wanted to mention briefly that PGE and Energy Trust provide free energy efficiency consultations, and we do this on-site or, over the phone or in person. And if you're interested, you can contact Paula Conway at the phone number or email listed here on the screen, and she can connect you. Either she can help you, or she can connect you with the right person that will get you set up with a consultation. And now I'd like to proceed to the question and answer portion of the webinar. So our first question, Dawn, is, do they make LED retrofit kits or replacement lamps for high bays?
They actually do have some high bay kits available, and you'll see them sometimes in the form of like a large, very large screw-in lamp is kind of what it looks like. Some of them are like that. Some of them are actual kits that have to be rewired. So either way, they do make kits. I did not cover them today, but you could talk to your lighting professionals or lighting partners about that to see if that's an option you want to pursue. Most of the time, brand new fixtures are the way people go, but there are some kits available. So good question.
Thank you. And it looks like our next question is, sorry, I'm just trying to find it here. The lens on my recessed troffer kits seem very yellow. Can I replace the lens when I update the fixture to LED?
Yes, you definitely could. However, finding lenses for those acrylic lens troffers is very difficult to find the right fit and the right kind. So you can definitely replace them. Most of the time, you're probably just going to want to go with a brand new LED kit that has a new lens. So that's what I would recommend. However, I'm not going to say no, you couldn't find one. So good question.
All right. This is, I believe, our last question that I have in so far. We have 1,000 watt high bays in our facility. Is there an LED replacement for those?
Yeah, good thought. There are a lot of manufacturing facilities that do have a 1,000 watt high bay instead of a 400 watt high bay, and that's just a big, large lamp that you can see up there, very, very high ceiling. And yes, there are LED kits for those. Again, talk to your lighting partner about that because there are several options available. It'll be a higher wattage. You'll see them maybe at 500 watts or something, still quite a bit of energy savings. It took them a while to come up with an LED version for that could get enough light out of it, but they are there. They're going to be more spendy, but again, remember the benefits will outweigh. So definitely pursue that if you have 1,000 watters.
Thank you, Dawn. And that was our last question. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today.